His community is feeling the pinch too. But those are the tough conversations he's having just to keep his doors open. That's the real impact of these policies. Small business owners being forced to choose between staying afloat and staying affordable. Instead of standing up to Trump, House Republicans are leaving small businesses behind by pushing a budget that makes healthcare more expensive for businesses while giving tax breaks to big corporations. Today, we will hear directly from small business owners who will be harmed by destructive Republican economic policies. With that, I yield to our Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for an opening statement. Leader, you're recognized.
Good morning, and let me thank steering and policy co-chairs Nanette Barragan, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and Robin Kelly for convening this critical discussion during Small Business Week. Let me also acknowledge the leadership of Small Business Ranking member Nydia Velasquez for her relentless advocacy on behalf of small businesses across our nation. And of course, let me thank our witnesses, Ms. Negron, Ms. Wells, Ms. Pavone, Ms. Russell, and Mr. Rowan for your presence here today and for your testimony. Small businesses, of course, are the foundation of our economy and the heartbeat of communities all across America. They provide millions of jobs and generate trillions of dollars in economic activity from sea to shining sea. We're now more than 100 days into the Trump administration, and every day that Donald Trump's costly tariffs stay in place, life in America gets more expensive, and the environment for small businesses gets more difficult. Because of Trump's policies, small businesses are being forced to shut down. Companies are laying people off. Businesses are unable to invest as a direct result of the uncertainty that has been created in the chaotic economic environment. Donald Trump and Republicans who continue in this Congress to rubber stamp his extreme agenda are crashing the economy in real time, driving us toward a recession. Why? So that they can provide tax breaks to their billionaire donors like Elon Musk instead of supporting small businesses. They are knowingly inflicting economic pain on hardworking entrepreneurs and small business owners. It's unconscionable, unacceptable, and it's un-American. House Democrats will not quietly stand by while working families, entrepreneurs, middle-class folks, small business owners, and everyday Americans are being forced to suffer at the hands of the extreme policies that are being unleashed on the American people. We will continue to push back publicly and aggressively, including at this hearing today. We must protect our veterans, we must protect our small businesses, protect our entrepreneurs, protect the free enterprise system, and protect the middle class. Thank everyone for joining us here today, and it's now my honor to yield to the distinguished gentle lady from the great state of New York, La Luchadora, the Honorable Nydia Velasquez.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries, and members of the Steering and Policy Committee, and to all the witnesses for being here, shining light into this important issue. And for working with us to bring together this National Small Business Week hearing to discuss real issues facing small businesses. This comes as a stark relief, given that the House Republicans are completely detached from the reality of the president's agenda. Last week, our majority held a partisan markup, including bills working to codify those cuts to the SBA and punish small business in cities that do not agree with the president's agenda. It proved that House Republicans are widely out of touch with the current state of small businesses across the country. Due directly to the president's policies, America's small businesses and entrepreneurs are in a state of crisis. Since being inaugurated, Trump has wreaked havoc on our small employers, allowing Doge to gut the SBA of nearly half of its staff and cutting over 1,800 federal contracts held by small business owners. But by far the most alarming action coming from the president is his unilateral, disruptive, and erratic tariff policy. He has enacted baseline tariffs of 10% on all other countries, 25% tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automobiles, and tariffs up to 145% against China. This has put our small businesses in a state of deep distress, unable to source their products from other countries and being hit by charges of tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to get products out of port. These tariffs are raising prices in the midst of a cost of living crisis, which will cause layoffs and business closures across the country. The president has squandered years of economic growth in just over 100 days in office, and now our Main Street businesses are facing increasing inflation and a looming recession being predicted by many banks and economists. The outcry we hear from our small businesses echoes much of what we heard in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, except this time the government is causing the pain, not working to alleviate it. While small businesses are scrambling to find ways to cope with these reckless tariffs, the president has openly scoffed at providing relief, saying he wants to focus more on big businesses that make cars than on small employers that make strollers. And Republicans are following their orders by enacting funding cuts to essential programs like Medicaid, cutting taxes for corporations and the wealthy, and ignoring the pain brought by tariffs. To that end, I hope this hearing provides some clarity for our colleagues so they can have a better understanding of the damage the president is doing to small American-owned companies. To explain that damage, we put together a recap of the impact President Trump's policies have had on small businesses in just the past 3 months. Let's take a look.
In the 4 years before President Trump took office, a record 21 million jobs were created.
Small businesses are actually bigger than big businesses when you add them all up.
Today, Trump's tariff war is hurting them, making small business smaller.
Are you
Look at the
considering
automobile
tariff
business.
relief for small businesses?
Why do you always mention that, you pick up a couple of little businesses? What about the car business? They're going to make a fortune because of the tariffs.
More than 70% of small businesses depend on imported goods, and 78% of small businesses expect tariffs to raise their costs. For 4 straight months, small business optimism has been declining, while Trump cuts taxes for the rich.
But a small business like mine will be out of business before the end of the year if things continue on this path.
That's why we need to fight for Americans and protect small business.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries, Ranking Member Velasquez, my Democratic colleagues for helping us lead this important hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for sharing your stories and your expertise. We all know that small businesses are the economic engines of our communities. They're not just the stores that we frequent, but the heartbeat of our neighborhoods, small towns, and rural communities across this country. As we just saw, Donald Trump and Republicans have launched an all-out attack on Main Street. Once again, they are showing us who they're fighting for, not the Americans who work for a living, not the business owners who create jobs and keep our economy humming. Republicans are only fighting for the people who can write them large campaign checks. Today, we want to dive deeper into how Trump's policies are hurting small businesses and how Republicans in Congress are making things worse, refusing to stand up to Trump's reckless agenda and pushing a budget that punishes small businesses while giving a windfall to the biggest corporations. To begin, we'll hear from Michael Negron. Mr. Negron is a policy fellow specializing in economic issues at the Groundwork Collaborative. Before joining Groundwork, Mr. Negron was Special Assistant to the President for Economic Policy at the National Economic Council. He's also previously worked in policy roles for federal agencies and state and local governments in Illinois. Michael, thank you for joining us today. You're now recognized.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all today about the impact of President Trump's economic policies, and in particular, his trade agenda. My name is Michael Negron. I'm a policy fellow with Groundwork Collaborative, an economic think tank, and I'm also on the board of Small Business Majority. I most recently served in the White House and the National Economic Council, and I worked in senior roles for Governor Pritzker, for Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, in my home state of Illinois. As I laid out in a report released by the Groundwork Collaborative last week, after promising during the 2024 campaign to lower prices on day one, the president has instead chosen to pursue policies that will risk stagflation, which is this toxic combination of higher prices and lower economic growth. And this would be the first period of stagflation since the 1970s. And you could see the concerns in the recent Federal Reserve statement that talked about growth slowing and prices going up. The president has made clear that he is choosing this inflation eyes wide open. Tariffs are a tax. Tariffs are a tax that a business pays, typically an American business, at the port of entry when the products they ordered come into the country. And he chose to make light of the nature of this tax when he talked about how this Christmas little girls may need to make do with only $3 or $4 instead of $30, as if that's an actual scenario that happens with families. The reality is that the consequences of these policies for families will be severe if we don't change course. Experts estimate that the typical American household will pay nearly $5,000 more each year annually on prices for all the products they need, from everything from cars to clothes, from baby strollers to video games. We are already seeing record high prices for essentials like ground beef, coffee, and eggs. And data shows that the American people simply don't like this policy. They don't like tariffs. The University of Michigan's consumer survey, released every month, found a drop in consumer sentiment of 27% since the president took office. This is the steepest 3-month decline since the COVID-19 pandemic. And consumer expectations for inflation over the coming year are at the highest level they've been at since 1981. Small businesses are already seeing the effects, as you'll hear from the witnesses on the second panel. Surveys of businesses show that optimism and confidence are declining. Manufacturers are reporting that they're seeing higher prices paid on the inputs they need to make their products. And businesses will be uniquely hurt by the president's policies, small businesses will, and sometimes it'll be to the advantage of big business. We are already seeing reports that big box retailers like Target and Walmart have started to squeeze their vendors to prevent the tariff prices from being passed along to them. Well, the fact is those prices have to go somewhere. And so the businesses that will be most at risk of being hurt are small businesses who don't have the same buying power to squeeze their vendors in the same way. And so as you'll hear today, small businesses are staring down the barrel of higher costs, product shortages, depressed consumer spending, and higher costs of capital. As I covered in a report last month for the Center for American Progress, the tariffs come as the administration is cutting the Small Business Administration by 43%. And it's working to functionally eliminate the CDFI fund, the Economic Development Administration, the Minority Business Development Agency, all of which support Main Street businesses, small businesses in communities across the country. And these are agencies with a long history of bipartisan support. Big businesses will have an easier time working the system, getting their foot in the door to seek exemptions from tariffs. We saw this just weeks ago. Tim Cook successfully worked the president's billionaire cabinet to get relief for his products. Contrast this with what the president said, and we saw it in the video that was just played, where he rejected calls to have similar exemptions for small businesses. There's a better way. Congress can pass bipartisan legislation to end the tariffs. The president can seek to truly focus on rising costs, to take on things like algorithmic software that landlords use to collude to raise prices. He can focus on bipartisan legislation that was present at the end of the last Congress that would crack down on those middlemen that drive up prescription drug prices. He can support bipartisan bills that will increase home construction, and he can oppose efforts by his administration and by Republicans in Congress to roll back the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's caps on bank overdraft fees and credit card late fees, both of which cost consumers billions of dollars a year. So instead of focusing intently on lowering costs, as he promised he would, President Trump has instead led us to the precipice of stagflation. And the tragedy is that it didn't have to be this way. President Trump has chosen this path. Thank you.
Mr. Negron, always nice to see an Illinoisan here, and thank you for your testimony. I want to focus on the tariffs and the impact, I mean, quite frankly, on all businesses, but especially on smaller businesses. Donald Trump campaigned on addressing the cost of living, and as you mentioned, things haven't quite worked out that way. How have the tariff policies already affected the cost of living in the United States, and how do you think they're going to impact it in the future?
As we've all noted, the president promised to lower costs on day one. And by that standard, he's broken his promise and has made choices that will cost families thousands of dollars a year. And we're already seeing some effects trickle in, and we know that the effects will become more pronounced if he doesn't reverse course. For example, the cost of groceries is already up a 0.5 percentage point in only the 2 measured months that have transpired since he took office. I mentioned that eggs, ground beef, and coffee are at all-time highs. We watched mortgage rates were at 7% when he came in office, started to decline down to 6.6 or so, and then right around Liberation Day, started to shoot back up to 6.8. And so we'll see where they land if this policies continue. We've seen used car prices jump about 4.9% in April, largely driven by the fact that consumers are upping their purchases of automobiles, trying to get ahead of the tariffs taking effect on the new inventory that comes in. Online sales platforms like Shein and Temu have announced price increases due to China tariffs and the closure of the de minimis loophole. To give it just an example of a business, Affiliated Foods, which is a wholesaler in Texas that services around 700 independent grocery stores in 8 states. There have been news reports that they've reported seeing price increases from their vendors on everything from bananas to canned tuna to plastic utensils. Brands including Stanley, Black & Decker, Adidas, Procter & Gamble, they've reported price increases tied to tariffs. And so we're starting to see them. My Groundwork Collaborative recently released a report to highlight how tariffs are becoming a baby tax, that we're seeing announced significant price increases on strollers, and car seats, high chairs, and sippy cups. And so these are the types of things you would expect to hear when you look at what experts have said, that this is going to cost anywhere from $4,500 to $5,000 more for the average household once they're fully in effect. And again, when you look at the promises to lower prices, the administration is not living up to them.
So can you speak also, there's the direct, you put a 28% import tariff on, all of a sudden that's a 28% increase. Can you speak about the uncertainty on top of this and how that cost manifests through? What are the difficulties that you're seeing businesses are facing in this environment when the tariffs are on again, off again, they don't know what's going to come next? How do businesses plan? How do they invest in this environment?
Well, it's very difficult. And I think you're going to hear, we were just talking, I was talking with some of the other witnesses beforehand, and that was one of the top themes that emerged is we don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, businesses need certainty. They need certainty to plan their investments. That means you want clear laws that are enforceable and you understand what they say. You want to have confidence about prices, both what you're seeing now in prices, but what prices are going forward. And what the president has done is announced a set of policies that will be very expensive. You're looking at 145% tariffs on products from China, 25% on steel and aluminum, a series of country by country, quote unquote, reciprocal tariffs that can be as high as 40, 50% that he's paused, but are looming over all of the negotiations. And then in announcing those really expensive policies, he's then, as you noted, gone back and forth on what the exact amounts will be, when they're going to take effect. Are there going to be exemptions? He initially drew a very hard line against exemptions, but it seems every few weeks a new exemption is announced. And then how long these tariffs will be in effect. You hear some folks in the administration portray it as tariffs are a mean to an end. We will use this to negotiate a better deal so that other countries will take our products. But then you hear the president himself say that this is a change in the way we do business, that we're just going to have tariffs in place and they'll be in place for a long time. So if you're a small business, really any business, how are you supposed to plan whether to make investments? You want to open a new location, you want to hire employees. You may want to, in fact, move your supply chains to avoid some of these tariffs. But amidst all the uncertainty, it's hard to pull the trigger on making those types of investments. And so this all adds up to businesses, many businesses hitting the pause button, and they're just waiting for one man to make up his mind. And this is not a recipe for growing businesses or creating jobs.
Go, yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Negron. Wanted to ask about ports. As a result of the Trump tariffs, we've already seen and heard lots of reports about empty ports in places like Seattle, as well as significant declines in volume at ports in places like California and my home state of New York. How do you expect this to impact the economy in the coming months?
So particularly with respect to China, these large tariffs, 145% on products coming in from China, the reprisals of 125% against American products, I mean, these are so high, they're effectively an embargo. And so traffic we can expect to continue to dry up. And as you've mentioned, I've seen a report of traffic at the Port of LA, which is responsible for about 40% of incoming products, has fallen by about 35%. Last night, a commissioner at the Port of Seattle was on CNN saying the Port of Seattle's completely empty. We've seen reports of trucking companies starting to go bankrupt. And so we're starting to see a lot of disruption. And a lot of experts have predicted, and I think you'll hear today, that as this goes on month by month, starting in May, you will see less products on shelves. And as you go further along, things like the back-to-school season could be at risk. Christmas could become at risk in terms of products being on shelves. Just as when I was a kid, we used to go to Indiana to buy fireworks. You couldn't buy them in Chicago. And my wife's from Michigan, and she would do the same. And you're seeing reports now of firework vendors going out of business in Indiana because the tariffs are so high, right? And so these things will add up into changes in what Americans see. And that's just on the consumer side. As these things take effect, you will also see layoffs in the trucking, in the shipping, and ultimately in the retail sectors. And those will have actual lasting effects on the economy and on people's lives. And so if this policy persists, I think we can expect over time empty shelves and lost jobs. And the president is running out of time to change course.
Yeah, you mentioned not knowing the exact timeline of what the president's thinking. If he decided to reverse most of his tariffs in the next few days, how much damage would already have been done, and how long would it take us to recover?
Well, I think about this in two ways. And I think in the first way, there is irreparable harm that I think has been caused to the reputation of the United States, the trust that we have in the eyes of our allies and our trading partners. And that could have lasting effects on the domestic economy. As partner nations seek alternatives to the United States, you will have businesses that may seek to make permanent changes to their supply chains, and there may be just a general reluctance to invest given the volatility of the last few weeks. And you could see some lasting effects on anywhere from higher prices or reduced product choices if supply chains move to countries that are more expensive or less efficient in terms of manufacturing. You could see more expensive mortgages and business loans if countries lose faith in the dollar, and then it becomes more expensive for the United States to sell its debt to other countries. And the most affected industries could experience lasting layoffs and dislocations. And I think the other way to think about this, and I think you'll hear about it from the businesses on the panel, is the recovery time, right? So it takes 2 months to go from order, particularly from China, to go from order to being on a shelf. And as those things fully stop, if everything is lifted, they need to restart again. And you're looking at potentially at real chokeholds at ports and supply chain issues. Just if a month from now things change and all those canceled orders get reordered, we could see a lot of issues just similar to what we saw during COVID in terms of just backups at the ports, and that could affect prices as well.
Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Negron, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for your testimony so far. A couple of questions. So we've talked mostly at this point about President Trump and what he's done to small businesses. I actually want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening here in Congress. The Republican budget extends provisions of the 2017 Trump's tax cuts that have ostensibly targeted small businesses, like the pass-through deduction. Can you explain how flawed this provision is in delivering real relief to real small businesses on Main Street?
Yes, happy to. And I think this is a very clarifying question that you're asking, because as we look at as we stare down the barrel of the big cuts to the SBA, potential cuts to Medicaid, to food stamps, the president talks about, and his team talks about, all the revenue we're going to get from these tariffs, which we know are hitting consumers and small businesses the hardest. This is all, as Leader Jeffries noted, this is all about paying to extend tax cuts that primarily benefit the wealthy. And so I think the qualifying business exemption, tax exemption in Section 199A, the pass-through, is a great example of this. As I'm sure you all know, the way the way this exemption functions is that those pass-through entities, think sole proprietorships, partnerships, LLCs. This exemption, and that's about 95% of small businesses, by the way. These can be quite small businesses. Think of someone running a cleaning business, or you might have an electrician or a handyman, right? These are not multinational enterprises. And the exemption, as currently structured, allows them to deduct 20% of qualified business expenses. And on its face, that sounds like a perfectly fine deal, but when you think about it, the more money you make, the bigger the tax exemption. And so multi-million-dollar LLCs are getting significant exemptions, and that handyman who maybe pulls in $80,000 a year, that 20% isn't looking so big. And so the facts bear this out. 74% of current Section 199A benefits flow to the wealthiest 5% of businesses. Those small pass-throughs with adjusted gross incomes of under $100,000 took home an average deduction of about $2,000. And so there is a better approach. There is, as I mentioned, I'm on the board of Small Business Majority, and we're supporting a bill that's going to be introduced, or perhaps has been introduced today, by Representative Gwen Moore, that would replace the current qualified business income exemption with a $25,000 flat deduction that would work similar to the standard deduction on your personal income taxes. And so businesses could deduct up to $25,000, and it'd be available for businesses up to adjusted gross income of $400,000 for joint filers, $200,000 for single filers. And so when you come back to that example, the handyman who makes $80,000 a year, that $25,000 exemption is a much bigger benefit for that business. And by phasing it out for the wealthier businesses, we can focus that exemption on mom and pop businesses. And that's really where I think our focus should be.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let me close with this. This question. President Trump and Elon Musk, the Dodge project, they've taken an indiscriminate chainsaw to nearly 3,000 government contractors, 18,000 of which were by small businesses. And how do you think the president and Mr. Musk's actions will disproportionately harm small businesses, particularly those owned by women and people of color?
Thank you. It's clear that Doge, Elon Musk, the president, have taken a chainsaw to small business services. We've talked about the 43% cut to the SBA. We've talked about, as mentioned in your question, the termination of all these contracts that are disproportionately hitting minority and women-owned businesses because they're so focused on what they have referred to as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and their attempt to totally end that policy. And so those impacts to those contractors are quite stark, and I think you'll hear about that from one of our witnesses today. But they've also abandoned the Biden administration's 15% goal for federal contract dollars to small disadvantaged businesses, something that I worked on when I was in the White House. And that means potentially billions in reduced contract opportunities, not only for women and minority-owned businesses, but for rural-owned businesses, for native-owned businesses, for veteran-owned businesses. They are working to destroy agencies like the Minority Business Development Agency and the CDFI Fund, agencies with long histories of bipartisan support that have been focused on traditionally underserved communities. And the insult to injury is the massive cuts to SBA, which just means less services, less support, if you're a business that needs help, these aren't just staff in DC, these are staff all across the country. And so if you need help getting a loan, you need help with some business advice, it's just gonna be harder to get a hold of somebody as they eliminate those positions.
Absolutely. Mr. Negron, thank you so much for your testimony. It's eye-awakening. Small businesses are far more than numbers in any of our districts, on any page. You know, in my district alone, small businesses are the pillar of the economic fabric, the economic opportunity, the culture of our community. From Oakland's Chinatown to downtown Alameda, each one represents the dreams of everyday Americans who are pursuing not only good work, but their passion. They're working to create jobs, to simply try to make our communities stronger. And while Republicans turn their backs on small businesses in real time, House Democrats are committed to listening to small business owners and doing right by these job creators and workers every day. Last month, I toured Latino-owned businesses in the Fruitvale district of Oakland to hear about what these owners need to succeed. And they're real issues in real time. Democrats have asked small business owners across America to tell us firsthand, 4 months into the Trump administration, about what's impacted them. But now let's hear their stories. Roll the film.
The first 100 days of economic policy under the new administration has created real uncertainty for small businesses across America.
And now, on top of regular costs of doing business, we get to pay a tariff.
Never in a million years would I imagine that it would now cost me an additional $230,000 just to bring my products into the country.
Trump is literally just killing small businesses for no reason.
1 out of 3 small businesses are canceling or delaying their expansion and investment plans. 1 in 3 are canceling their hiring plans. 1 in 3 are holding more cash reserves.
We don't need another handout for the wealthy. We need smart tax reform that will work for all of us and help Main Street businesses thrive.
We need smart policies that help cut our costs, and tariffs, they do the opposite.
I'm a fighter, and so I'm looking for every way possible to not go out of business.
Call your member of Congress and tell them to end this tariff chaos.
Thank you to the small business leaders who have shared their powerful stories with us. Small businesses provide character to our main streets and employ many of our neighbors. Trump's tariff policies have created uncertainty for small businesses, and it will affect our local economies in the short and long term. Today, we're joined by 4 small business owners who are here in D.C. to share their personal stories with Congress and the American people. Walt Rowan is president of Susquehanna Glass, a small business that has been in his family for generations in the borough of Columbia, Pennsylvania, not too far from Lancaster, a business that has grown under Walt's leadership over the last 3 decades. We should be supporting small businesses like Walt's and help them continue to thrive. Small businesses like Susquehanna Glass deserve better than reckless Trump tariffs. Walt, thank you for being here today. You're recognized.
Speaker Jeffries, Chairman Velasquez, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am Walt Rowan, 3rd generation president of Susquehanna Glass Company in Columbia, Pennsylvania, and co-chair of the Small Business for America's Future, a national coalition of small business owners and leaders. My family business has been decorating glassware for 115 years, survived 2 world wars, a Great Depression, the COVID pandemic, but now we are facing some of the most challenging economic climates I have ever seen. The chaos of the last few months is happening in isolation. It's piling on top of systemic pressures and challenges that small business owners have faced for years. The tax code continues to disadvantage businesses like mine. When the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, we heard grand promises of Main Street benefits and growth. The reality, unlike my corporate competitors that got a big, huge 40% reduction in their tax rate, I didn't benefit at all from the small business tax deduction. This is common. Our surveys consistently show the deduction did nothing to help small businesses hire workers, increase wages, pay down debt, or invest in growth opportunities, as was promised. Soaring healthcare costs are another burden that's been straining small business budgets for decades. At Susquehanna Glass, we once provided healthcare to all of our employees. Today, that's financially impossible due to runaway costs. Instead, we help our team navigate the ACA marketplace. The enhanced premium tax credits passed a few years ago have become essential for my employees to afford coverage. If these credits expire, many will face impossible financial situations. Yet instead of addressing these long-standing challenges with targeted solutions, we're seeing misguided policies that only magnify these pressures on Main Street businesses. I'm here during Small Business Week because Main Street needs your leadership now. While large corporations have powerful lobbying influence to secure carve-outs and advantages, as we've seen already, small businesses like mine are bearing the full brunt of economic uncertainty and rising costs. The 33 million small businesses across America are counting on you to fight for policies that address our challenges. We employ nearly half of America's private workforce and create 2/3 of net new jobs. When you support small businesses, you support the heart of the American economy. After 115 years, I want to ensure that Susquehanna Glass and millions of small businesses like it can continue providing jobs, strengthening communities, and driving innovation. I urge you to champion policies that create an equitable environment where small businesses can flourish. Thank you.
Taking care of everybody else. Thanks to all the witnesses for coming today. I found it funny who I was asked to introduce, because anyone that knows me here knows I absolutely love shoes. So it's really my honor to introduce Haley Pavone, and she is represented by, he'll kill me if I don't say it, Rep. Carbajal. So thank you for being here today. We're joined by Haley Pavone, the founder of Pashion Footwear, a company reimagining the future of shoes with the world's first convertible high heel. I need to look at those. Many of you watching may know Haley from her appearance on ABC's Shark Tank, where she stood her ground against the sharks and fought hard to best position her business. She walked away without making a deal. That's because she knew what was right for her business, and that is why she is here today. Because of her hard work and vision, Pashion Footwear is now a thriving multi-million-dollar business selling her shoes. Passions all around the world. Haley, thank you so much for using your voice and staying true to your vision, and you are now recognized.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Speaker Jeffries, Chairwoman Velasquez, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today. I am a lifelong California resident and the founder and CEO of Pashion Footwear, which is a registered Delaware C corporation with 12 employees, all of whom are U.S. citizens, and actually 3 of whom are joining me today from New York and Pennsylvania. I invented my company's core technology, fully convertible high heels that turn into flats. I'm happy to give demos later, when I was a 20-year-old junior in college. It took 2.5 years of R&D and supply chain sourcing to make our design possible, which is an innovative tech that requires precise injection molding in conjunction with craftsman footwear assembly. These 2 manufacturing methods currently only coexist at any kind of scale in China. We launched the brand into the market in June of 2019 and have since navigated the first trade war, the pandemic, the supply chain crisis #1, and the recession. Despite these obstacles, I've been able to build out my American dream. Today, Pashion is a profitable growth business. We grew top line 85% in 2024 to $9 million in gross revenues and achieved a 19% EBITDA profit, which is nearly double the industry average for footwear. I cannot emphasize enough that the current breadth and speed of policy changes stands to absolutely gut everything that I've worked so hard to build seemingly overnight. The same is true for thousands of other small businesses like mine. I can certainly appreciate the administration's desire to onshore more of our manufacturing. However, the simple fact is that supply chains do not grow overnight. Speaking to my own industry, building out a high-end technical footwear manufacturing facility in the US would take 3 to 5 years and tens of millions of dollars that a company my size simply does not have. That leaves us with the option of trying to move from China to another country. However, not all countries are created equal when it comes to the facilities, materials, and labor at their disposal. In Vietnam, we would be forced to adjust our minimum order quantity from 200 pairs per style to 3,000 pairs, representing a massive budget increase on every single purchase order. In Brazilian factories, the equipment they have is not the same as in China, making our $400,000 worth of custom molds and tooling incompatible. We'd have to abandon those assets and then pay to reopen them in Brazil to begin production there. I could regale you with similar stories from other countries, but at the end of the day, all are a moot point. Industries like footwear have a 4 to 6 month lead time on shipments. In the extremely optimistic scenario that I'm able to source a new non-Chinese supply chain within the next few months, that batch of supply wouldn't even come into effect until spring of 2026, meaning I will suffer paying the tariffs for 9 months even while actively trying to adapt to these new policies. To help demonstrate the impact of these tariffs, I'd love to talk to you about the shoes that I'm wearing. This pair of shoes, which you'll just have to imagine for now, I'll show you later, but this pair of shoes has a product cost of $38.77, and we have historically sold it to customers for $195. Once we include all product costs, such as freight, warehousing, and merchant fees, as well as accounting for our operating costs, which is inclusive of our salaries, marketing budget, our U.S. contractor retainers, product development, and general overhead, we are left behind with a total net profit for this shoe sale of $19.76. However, with the implementation of these new tariffs, as well as last Friday's elimination of the de minimis value under Section 321, this math has now been flipped on its head. Since these shoes are textile fabric, they already recognize a base duty rate of 37.5%. Then we add on the 7.5 301 tariff that was established in the first Trump administration, followed by the current 145% surcharge tariff for a grand total of 190% due at import on these shoes. Wow. My business has now overnight gone from profiting $19.76 on this shoe to losing $45.95 on every single sale of this style. Small businesses right now are faced with a difficult question. What comes first? Executing a complex supply chain move, or the bank account hitting zero? I'm now incredibly motivated to move my supply chain, but there is simply nowhere to go, and certainly not this quickly. I can leave my price point the same to keep sales steady, but I'll slowly bleed out with each and every transaction. As a small business without a huge amount of cash reserves to fall back on, the amount of time that we can afford to steadily lose money is measured in weeks, possibly months, but certainly not years. This approach would lead to certain layoffs and rapid, unjust insolvency. The other option is to pass this tariff cost onto the U.S. consumer, adding the $63.73 in tariffs onto the price. Not only is this bad for the American consumer, but it also creates uncertainty for the business. Will a customer who's used to buying a product for $195 still buy it for $258.73? Unfortunately, that is a question I will quickly be learning the answer to, as we've had no choice but to immediately add a tariff tax line item spelled out plain as day to every single product we sell as a means of survival. Every day that these trade policies continue, it means the death of more American dreams. This is not a short-term pain. This is the destruction of livelihoods, both for entrepreneurs and those they employ. This is supply shortages. This is price hikes to the U.S. consumer. As the backbone of the U.S. economy, small business owners are calling on you, our elected officials, for consideration, relief, and support. We ask that you fight for us with the same passion that we fight for our businesses, our employees, and our customers every single day. This really is not a matter of Republican or Democrat in my eyes. This is a matter of economics, and this math, quite simply, does not add up. Thank you for your time.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that testimony. And small businesses are the backbone of the American dream. Any of the entrepreneurs and business owners in this room can tell you it's not easy. Success is not certain. Growth is not guaranteed. These small businesses are built from the ground up by people who know there is no such thing as a day off when it's your name on the door or it's your customers or your employees who are on the line. Being a small business owner requires sacrifice and sweat, tenacity, tears. I've literally had small business owners in my district talk to me about those tough days where they are sleeping on the floor of their business to make sure that it survives. Today, we're joined by Miss Lawana Russell. She began her company, Business Manage Associates, with $500, hope, and a dream. And over the past 20 years, that $500, she has turned that into a multi-million-dollar company. Now she uses her experience to advise small business owners and a leader in her community. She knows firsthand the pain of Donald Trump's extreme economic policies and the stress that it is putting on small businesses, both short and long term. Lawana, thank you for being here, and you are recognized.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Leader Jeffries, Ranking Member Velasquez, and the distinguished co-members and chairs of the committee. I very much appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Lawana Russell. I am the founder and president of Business Management Associates, and as mentioned, started this company with $500. I am also the chair and the board of directors for the Small Business Majority, a national business organization that empowers America's entrepreneurs. So coming into 2025, I was excited. My company was turning 20 years old, and I felt like it was finally time for me to celebrate. I was going to find an equity partner, some other partners to join me. We're going to grow BMAs more. In December 2024, I started a valuation process. We were poised to earn $15 million this year. I was celebrating. I'd planned a birthday trip, because my birthday is in February, important to note, and I had planned a birthday trip. Had never done that in 20 years of having my company. On February 18th, a day I will never forget, my life changed. I received multiple T4Cs, which is in government language, termination for the convenience of the government of contracts. We also received a few stop work orders. I literally saw the business that I built begin to crumble. And as an odd twist of fate, I also received the valuation of the company, which I can no longer sell at this point. So as you can imagine, I went into shock, which progressed to anger, then grieving, almost mourning. I had to immediately lay off about 50 team members, and we lost about 65% of the company. I canceled our 20th anniversary bash that we were so excited for, and I literally thought about giving up. In our history, we have survived the economic downturn in 2008, multiple government shutdowns, sequestration, and COVID. I didn't know if I had the energy to continue pushing forward. And then I talked to my 101-year-old grandmother and said, yes, I do. According to the American Small Business Chamber of Commerce, small businesses held 60% of the total government contracts terminated by DOGE. Potential multi-year loss of remaining value in the billions. This equates to about 5,700 total contracts just by small businesses alone. Of course, during other times, we've seen firsthand the importance of reliability and support of government agencies in times of crisis. We understand today that that paradigm is shifting, But we also need to ensure that small businesses have the resources needed to continue growing their businesses and contributing to the economy. The United States is home to 32.5 million small businesses across industries that employ 61.2 million people. I'll repeat those numbers. 32.5 million businesses, 61.2 million Americans. This is about half of all American employees. So even though my space is specifically in the government contracting space, the impact on the economy will completely be felt by Main Street. In fact, just last month, the NFIB found that small business optimism and economic outlook indicators are falling, with consumer confidence not too far behind. Additionally, the Joint Economic Committee found that small businesses with fewer than 10 employees declined by 3% already this year. 360,000 jobs just since January of this year. Across all industries, the vast majority of small business owners are concerned. Cuts to SBA and all of the programs, the 7A loan. Clearly, small businesses are facing a systematic challenge, and we need this committee to take action. As it relates to government contracting, I believe a lot of people think that as women, especially for me, I'm a Black woman, we get those handouts, right? DEI, that's what it was all about. We get the handouts. That's just not true. I started my business almost the day after I graduated high school. I left home and I legally emancipated, which means that at 17, I was on my own. I would never say that I was homeless. I will say that I was a really good couch surfer. I had to learn quickly how to figure things out because I wanted to eat, right? So I was a gigpreneur before gigpreneur was a word. That phrase is so popular today, and I want to congratulate myself, but I know it wasn't me. I maintained this mentality as I put myself through undergrad and ultimately grad school, working 4 or 5 jobs to make sure I was in that place. So it was really no surprise when I was able to then start BMA with $500. So this is one thing that we know. Small businesses are better positioned to be flexible and can easily pivot to take on new tasks and work truly with partners to resolve issues. That's what we all do on this panel. We have that creativity, that mindset. We take pride in the fact that our ability to grow as role models goes to other communities, to other individuals, to give them that opportunity to say, yes, you can do this too, because we want to be contributing, tax-paying members of society. But we need the resources right now to move through this transition. We know it's a transition. We don't know what is going to be on the other side, but we know that we need this committee to stand up for small businesses and the programs that support our ability to grow and thrive. The cuts have taken place. What now? How do we move forward? How do we support businesses like mine to get to the next level, to go back to where we were? We need your support. We need it today. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
There we go. My microphone was not turning on. Thank you so much, Luana, for your incredible testimony. I am joining us today after, appropriately, a Mother's Day event with my colleague, Brittany Pedersen. She and I are proud moms in Congress making our way through, and it is apt to precede my introduction of Sarah today. It is my honor to welcome you, Sarah, to today's hearing. Sarah Wells is the founder and CEO of her own company, Sarah Wells Bags. For over a decade, Sarah's business has provided new parents with the products they need to raise their families, enabling moms to breastfeed their newborns with comfort and ease. From breast pump bags to bras and clothing, Sarah's team has made life easier for women. But Trump's tariffs are already taking a hit to their businesses, forcing them to include this added tax to new orders. It's the last thing a new mom needs, or a small business owner. One of the things that stood out to me as I looked at Sarah's incredible bags was reminding my days as a new mom when I was working at the Justice Department, traveling on the train, lugging my breast pump bag back and forth. And I thought, wow, the innovations have surely changed. I see Debbie nodding her head as well. So kudos to you. Keep innovating, keep creating. Where were you when we needed you? But that's exactly what Trump's tariffs are doing. They are stifling this type of innovation, creativity, and adding an unnecessary price hike to American consumers. Sarah, thank you for joining us today. You are now recognized.
Great, thank you, and happy early Mother's Day to all the moms in here. Good morning, co-chairs and members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Sarah Wells. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid. You know, the kid on your block hustling in the lemonade stand, that was me. Or winning the science fair because I wanted to solve real problems. That drive never left me. It really is the American dream. Ironically, my small business journey actually started here on Capitol Hill, where I had encouragement from a friend. At the time, I was in the nonprofit sector. I was struggling to balance being a new mom and a working professional, very similar to how you described. She suggested that I take up those challenges and these solutions I was dreaming of for breast pump bags and more and turn them into a business to help other moms. 13 years of success later, I've returned to Capitol Hill today asking for relief from a trade policy that could very well end my business and others like it. I founded Sarah Wells Bags to support new moms by designing functional bags and apparel to address these real challenges of early parenthood. I also wrote a book, Go Ask Your Mothers, which explores how to better support working moms, because supporting American families has always been at the heart of the work that I do. Right now, these tariffs are crushing that work. The final handbags that I import from China are subject to multiple layers of tariffs. That base duty, the Section 301 tariffs, and now the new 2025 tariffs, pushing my burden to upwards of 200% before my products even reach our warehouse. I've tried to move my manufacturing to the United States, actually at least a half a dozen times, and most recently 10 days ago. And as if there was any doubt about how seriously I am trying to reshore, consider this. Over the last month, I've spoken on just about every major news media outlet in the country about the disaster these tariffs are causing small businesses like mine. Not a single American handbag company has reached out to me for manufacturing partnership, although I've received dozens of unsolicited offers from Chinese manufacturers. That says everything. There is no handbag manufacturing infrastructure in the US at scale. It just doesn't exist. And a single backpack in my product line relies on 15 different manufacturers and suppliers to make that one bag. Even if a domestic factory could do the final assembly of the product, I would still need to import raw materials from over a dozen global partners, and all of that would be subject to these tariffs. These are not hypothetical costs. On a recent shipment I brought in just a couple of months ago when the 2025 tariff was set at 20%, I paid a surprise $15,000 fee just to release my goods from the port. That alone was devastating. But now under the new rules and the increased tariff rate, that same shipment would cost me an extra $86,000 in duties. That's 1 or 2 salaries on my team. That kind of burden jeopardizes every job I've created. I've been so lucky to actually employ military spouses on my team because we offer flexible remote work and they need that as they move bases. Tariffs also force me to raise prices on the new parents that rely on our products. This is families that are facing their postpartum recovery, feeding journeys, and we all know the life with a newborn. The threat to small businesses isn't prospective, it's happening right now. This last week, I cut back the hours on my team, I gave up my office lease, I paused hiring, I cut my marketing, I canceled all new product development, and I've scaled back my community giving. Every year, we donate hundreds of products, give direct financial support, and volunteer our time with US nonprofits. We just can't do that this year. We are going to start running out of inventory by July. For the first time in 13 years, we have no orders in with our longtime factory partner in China because we simply cannot afford these tariffs. We're trying to restart production in a new country, but it's starting from scratch. Even if we can get goods from a new supplier, it will be next year before they arrive. Will my business be here next year? I can't say with any certainty. To Congress, I say this: the tariffs aren't a future threat. They're hurting businesses like mine today. While I can speak from my personal experience, I'm really not alone, as you've heard. My story reflects the challenges facing millions of small businesses across this country, many of whom are trying to raise their voices here and through organizations like the National Retail Federation. We need a trade policy that is transparent, predictable, and fair. We're asking for a fair shot at keeping the American dream alive. I didn't build this business for myself alone. I built it for the moms who really deserve those solutions in the marketplace, and for the American workers who count on the jobs with my company. This is what building in America is supposed to look like. Real people creating real solutions with heart, hustle, and hope. When small businesses are threatened, the promise of American entrepreneurship is on the line. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story today.
Sarah, thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for being here today. These are very powerful stories that every American really needs to hear. I'm thrilled to be here with Luana Russell, the chairman of the Alexandria Chamber of Commerce, succeeding my daughter, which I really appreciate. Ms. Wells, thank you too so much for hiring military spouses. As the child of a military spouse, it's an epidemic of their 25, 23% unemployment. You know, the cost of baby projects we know are already high. You spoke so well about what the tariffs have done to you. How are you going to respond? And how will it affect the parents you serve?
Absolutely. Let's talk about the parents first, because that's always who's on my mind. So there's really dire economic choices that they have to make right now. We know it's really expensive to have a baby in this country, whether that's healthcare costs or unpaid time off of work, and all that goes into that. And now they're going to have to make tough economic decisions around which of baby essentials can I afford to buy. I'm deeply concerned also about the safety consequences of that. I really think that you're going to find parents, when faced with no option but to maybe use a car seat past its expiration date, or go to a yard sale and buy a crib that doesn't meet current safety standards. I think that there's a trickle-down effect that we're going to see both in safety and economic and mental health pressure on these families. How that impacts me ultimately is consumer confidence is already down. My sales are already down 30% year over year. So I'm getting squeezed from both sides. I cannot afford to bring the product in. As I said, I have no orders in the works right now with China. I'm going to have a gap in inventory. I'll have no product to sell, or very high cost product to sell. And consumers are having to make these economic choices and are fearful about costs, and so they're spending less. And as a small business, I just won't stay open if I'm squeezed from both those sides.
And thank you for making the point that it's not just about your business, it's about all the people you serve, all the people that depend on your business. Mr. Rowan, you mentioned before that you really didn't see much benefit from TCJA 2017. Our Republican friends are always bragging about what a boon it was to small business. How did it really affect you?
Not much. Small Business for America's Future has done numerous surveys over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and it consistently comes back that the small business community sees very, very little, if any, benefit that would trickle down to higher wages, hiring more people, investing more money back into the businesses. The reality is that small businesses generally are new and they're growing. When you're new and growing and you make money, you have a profit, what almost every entrepreneurial business owner will do is reinvest that money back into the business. The minute you do that, you've dropped your profit and you're not paying taxes. That's the dream. That's the way the economics works. So when the government turns around and says, we're going to give you a tax break, we don't need a tax break necessarily because we've reinvested back into our businesses.
Mr. Rowan, you talked about how you used to be able to pay for the health insurance for all your employees. We're now looking at, they're attacking the enhanced premium tax credits. They're talking about cutting Medicaid. What's that going to do to healthcare for your people?
Healthcare is a mess in this country. At the corporate level, healthcare is an insurance concept, and the bigger the group, the better the spread of the risk is. So big corporations can easily have their own insurance plan and wrap everybody into a plan that they can afford. Small business people have a lot of problems that they cannot overcome. First of all, most of us are relatively small. You're a single proprietor. You're 50 years old. Try to go out and get health insurance and a 50-year-old, and if you have a bad heart, you're not going to get it. I have a business that used to be over 50 employees, so we were covering our employees. We were offering our employees health insurance, but we were in a mid-market, and we could wrap it into all of us at the same rate. The minute we dropped below 50, we didn't have the mid-market, and now suddenly we're priced at individual rates. So if I have, and I do, have a 50 or 60-year-old woman, and then I have a 25-year-old young man, the 25-year-old young man can get a policy for $300 a month. The woman who's 65, her policy went, when we were having a policy at around $500 a month, it was going to be over $1,500. So it just simply doesn't work. We were able to eliminate our policy and then go into, in Pennsylvania, the marketplace, the ACA marketplace, and then you have the stipends that bring the affordability of the policy into play. And that's what is being talked about being eliminated. If that happens, the vast majority of people that work for small businesses are going to be really out of the affordable market.
Thank you so much. I yield to the wonderful Johnny O. Strelczewski.
Thank you, Representative Byer, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for your stories. There's so much power in your stories, and I'm glad that we're able to elevate the advocacy you're doing for so many of your employees and your customers. And I'm sorry for the ways in which this president is forcing you into impossible choices for a business, impossible choices with your consumers. Walt, really appreciate your remarks. The fact that Republicans are looking to give tax breaks to Elon Musk while letting healthcare costs rise for small businesses is absolutely appalling to, I think, all of us up here. Haley, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into how tariffs are affecting your business, and specifically interested in how the expected impact affected your strategy for putting in orders for the rest of the year. In the face of all this uncertainty, are you expecting to maintain the same volume?
Yes, so, I mean, it's a very interesting question, especially when we talk about inventory, because essentially we just had our cost of goods skyrocket overnight, which of course is the fundamental building block of how we put together a budget. So, as I mentioned, footwear has a really long lead time. We're already theoretically supposed to be submitting our holiday season order in the next 2 weeks. A big part of the holiday and winter season for us is knee-high leather boots. It's our most expensive product. It costs $50 to make. Because again, we use very sophisticated labor. I think there's a huge misconception about the quality of labor in China. It is fantastic. We have mechanical engineers and trained craftsmen working on this product every single day, and frankly, we just don't have a competitive market for a manufacturing workforce here at that caliber. But anyway, this is a $50 product, or at least it was. Right now, that shoe is subject to a 190% tariff, so that goes from a $50 line item on my purchase order to nearly $150. How am I supposed to put a budget together, especially with the turbulence in this environment? For all I know, the tariff could go up to 200% tomorrow or drop down to 40. So without those fundamental building blocks in place, I truly have no idea how to have an inventory strategy. I'm actually joined today by Gabrielle Cohen, my inventory manager, and we've been banging our heads against the wall about this for the last month. In the short term, what I can tell you is our summer containers have already arrived near our warehouse, but we haven't accepted them yet. I'm honestly not confident it's a good financial decision for me to take on the final import costs. So it's just in limbo. So we might be seeing impacts as early as the next month or so. I cut my fall order down by 70%. You know, our business was on track to more than double this year. We were forecasting $15 million in top line and over $2 million in EBITDA. I can only support that if I have shoes to sell. If I don't have shoes to sell, I cannot hit those figures. So that purchase order for this fall should have been $1 million. That is only $300,000. So it's now going to be irreversibly it's impossible for me to hit my original projection because once that order is placed, it cannot be undone. That order is already 60% produced. So even if this goes away tomorrow, my year through the fall is shot.
Pretty incredible. And I think you touched on this a little bit, just as a follow-up. We know that the profits of a lot of our small businesses depend on selling a certain volume, to your point of how many you're going to get. If you're lowering volume, then how does that impact your bottom line?
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's a basic unit economics question. And to your point, there's two sides of A, the volume we can bring in, also the volume we can sell, which is where the pricing piece is very concerning. All of us up here that run businesses based on product are familiar with the math of we have to sell X number of units, and the profit from those units covers our basic operating costs, our salaries, everything that we have to cover just as an operation. That's what we get to break even. Then every unit above that we sell each month is the profit, but to your point, the profit is not money that's like just floating around in a bank account somewhere. It's creating U.S. jobs, and it's allowing us to buy more product to keep growing the business and reinvesting in that growth, eventually letting us post a profit. I'm actually very proud with our EBITDA last year. 2024 was the first year I paid a corporate income tax. Weird thing to be excited about, but after 8 years, I was proud. I'm a proud taxpayer now. But I won't be this year. So congratulations to the administration on that. But anyway, I mean, when we look at all of this, when we start thinking about selling fewer units, it's not just that profit that's getting gutted, i.e. the amount contributing to new jobs and more growth. We're concerned it's actually going to start dropping below that critical break-even mass, and that's where layoffs come into effect. That's where we start having to just cease operations in general, and as I discussed earlier, unjust insolvency. Not to mention, pivoting from your question slightly, if I may, I believe Ms. Russell mentioned this. You know, businesses are looking at this situation, trying to figure out how we're not going to go bankrupt, and we can't even rely on the SBA for support at this point. I had a term sheet from a bank for a $5 million SBA 7A loan in March. Fully vetted, took 2.5 months to due diligence. It was going to refinance all the bad, sharky debt we took on to survive the pandemic. So excited to finally be able to qualify and get out of that hole and also give us more working capital on hand than we've ever had before. Because of the administration's executive orders, you now cannot qualify for SBA 7A unless you can prove 100% U.S. shareholders in a C corporation. In the past, you just had to prove beneficial owners above 20%, which is only myself in this case. Because I have a 1.7% equity interest from a Mexican investor, the deal was pulled. So I can't even get small business loan funding to try to survive this interesting period in time. So it really does feel like an attack on profits and just an attack on operations in general.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for each of you for your testimonies today. It has literally been enlightened to so many people, and we always keep telling this story about we have to listen to people's stories because real people are being hurt each and every day. So I really appreciate your vulnerability coming here and telling your story personally. I want to move a little quickly because many of us have to make it to the floor. But Lawana, I want to turn to you a little bit because we've been having a lot of conversation with small business owners, minority women businesses specifically. And we know since January 20th, Elon Musk and President Trump have canceled over 1,800 contracts for small business owners. Many of them fall within the categories of 8A or hub zone programs for socially and economically disadvantaged business owners. And so it's just devastating to hear that once we talk with them and speak with so many businesses facing this. Can you discuss the overall impact this has had on your small business contractor community?
So devastation is probably a good word. I work with another organization called the Professional Services Council, and as it turns out, we had a conference last week where we were just talking about the overall impacts. So the membership is made up of a lot of organizations. 60% of the members are actually small businesses, and in previous years, we're all running around trying to network and talk about building business. This year, we're all huddling in corners talking about what are you going to do? I literally had a conversation with one of my colleagues who had all of her business at USAID. all of that business was taken from her in a day. She was a $10 million company, all of her business taken in a day. And I don't think people are really looking at the entirety and the total impacts of what that means, especially for USAID. So what that meant for her is that most of her employees are outside of this country. Take, for example, she'd have an employee sitting in Ghana with his or her family. Their child has now started middle school in Ghana. They have that lease on the apartment in Ghana. They don't have a home here in the United States anymore because their work was taking them for that 4-year contract in Ghana. Now that contract is gone. I cried with her as she's telling me how she had to call all of her employees in other countries and say, I'm so sorry, not only do you not have a job tomorrow, but I can't afford to keep your lease past the 28th. And I know you don't have a place to live here anymore, but you've got to get your family back here and figure it out. I'm thankful that I did not have to make those types of calls. My business is all in the United States, but I still had to call my employees and say, I'm so sorry, you don't have health care anymore. I'm so sorry, I know that your daughter just started college, but I'm sorry, today is your last day because the termination came today, and this is the last day that they're going to support our work. So when you just see that going out, and it ripples through the entire economy. It ripples through the Main Street. We're talking, I'm not going to the cleaners. I'm not fixing my car. I'm not going to my little coffee shop. I might not even be going to McDonald's. You know, we're just, the ripple effect of what this is doing across the economy is astounding. And we don't know, every day, we don't even know what we're gonna do.
Yes.
We don't know if there's gonna be a new email or a new something that while you're creating your strategy and you're trying to move forward and you're trying to figure it out, oh, well, now we've got a new email. What does that mean? What does that do to this organization and to the American economy? So we're pushing forward, and we appreciate everything that you guys are doing to help us push forward.
Thank you for that. I truly appreciate it. At this time, I'm going to yield to our fabulous and fearless whip Captain Clark.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I can live up to the fabulous and fearless, but I sure am angry. I sure am mad listening to all of you. What are we doing? What are we doing here? I have some very nice comments written by my staff, but listening to your testimony, it's just astounding. You know, if you had a dollar for every time politicians say small businesses are the backbone of our economy, you would not be sitting here today. So let's live it. You know, we talk a lot about the American dream, but everything this administration is doing is cutting it off. It takes a lot of faith. It takes a lot of courage to say, I have a dream and I'm going to open a small business. That is a huge leap of faith. And what you don't expect, you expect a lot of challenges. There are things, I mean, small businesses, entrepreneurs, there's so many things that come at you every single day. But what you shouldn't have is to have everything turned upside down. And in pursuit of tax cuts for the very wealthiest Americans who already have great success, we're putting in this nonsense in your way. And not only are you looking at tariffs that makes it so unpredictable, so uncertain, and you're leaving your product for the summer on a container ship, and many of them can't even have that container ship order leave because you have to pay when it leaves the country of origin. So, you know, that is a huge enough problem. And then you look at all the underpinnings. We learned recently in a meeting yesterday that 1 out of 4 small business owners, their household receives food benefits through the SNAP program, 1 out of 4. And it may not be any of you, but that is startling. And it goes to how close the margins are in the best of days. And like, thank goodness you're here, Haley, saying, I want to celebrate paying taxes because that means we've made it. And this is attack on profits, but it's also attack on people. When we are saying we are going to take away people's health care, we are going to make them live with this uncertainty of a tariff system that makes no sense from the beginning. And then we are going to look at taking away food programs, funding for public schools, for childcare, all the other systems that get you to the table to start this business. It's so un-American. It is so against what we tell people, what we tell our children. Like, work hard, be kind, look out for your neighbors. And if you take that faith to start a business and you put it together in a plan, you should have the SBA there saying, you know what, we're gonna help you get capital. Those are all your tax dollars that you're paying in, coming back, and they should be helping you. And instead, we're shredding. We're shredding your businesses for what? So that people who already have great wealth get to have more? That Donald Trump's family has made $1 billion every month he's been in office on the backs of all of you and all of those other businesses you represent. I had a small business owner in my district, Brian from Medford, and he runs a high-end audio equipment. 20 years, he's put in the blood, sweat, and tears to build a business that works. 20 years. And he's especially proud because most of his products are assembled here in the United States. That is a selling point for him. They mill their own aluminum, they assemble their own products, but they export 70% of their products to China. That is an export. And now he's like, this is not gonna work. I cannot sell enough in the United States to make it, and we are not gonna be competitive as an export to China. So it's game over for him unless something changes. 20 years of being a job creator, of being an innovator, of being someone in my district that is making a difference to the people he employs and to the pride he has in making an American-made product. All gone overnight for nothing. So I join Congresswoman McIver in thanking you for coming here today. We realize that all of this has personal risk. And thank you for representing and giving voice to small business owners across this country. And frankly, these tariffs don't care who you voted for, and we don't either. The point is you should be able to have a rule book that if you follow it, you don't get the rug jerked out from underneath you. And if you are creating a business that is successful, that we're here to help you and give you the tools for success, not take them away. So I want to also thank every single one of my colleagues for being in this fight. And I yield back to our co-chair, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but we are not going to let the whims of billionaires dictate our economic life in this country. And I truly thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Whip Clark, because this moment does call for calling it like we see it. All of our staffs have prepared very nice words for us, and I'm also not going to use mine, because throughout your testimony, all I kept hearing was Donald Trump's words echoing in my head that, you know, these tariffs, people are just going to have to live with a little bit of pain. A little bit of pain isn't remotely close to what we heard from each of you. We're talking about Ms. Russell having employees who she knows relied on paying the rent from the job that they had that you gut-wrenchingly had to lay them off from. The breast pump solutions, I lived that myself. So even beyond the possibility of that not even being available to new moms and new working moms, the fact that you have been an innovator and each of you have been focused on solutions-oriented business is the best of what America has to offer. You are the reason that we did this public hearing, that we wanted an opportunity to really show the impact of the uncertainty of the fear that is being instilled by this administration, by the acts that they are taking to the lifeblood and backbone of our economy, which we all do say are our small businesses. And they cannot be allowed to pretend. Trump and the MAGA extremists cannot be allowed to pretend that this is just a muted, mild impact, because it's very clearly not. I mean, Haley, I stopped wearing high heels quite a few years ago, but perhaps if I had your innovation, I wouldn't have been in so much pain, and I could have looked a little cuter walking around than I do today. Thankfully, I've been married 34 years, and my husband doesn't really care. But it's I'm being very tongue-in-cheek, but giving Americans, this is the innovation capital of the world, giving Americans the opportunity to have those options and to really embrace diversity and the way we can make choices. I thought that the Republicans actually believed in that, but very clearly they do not. So we all heard today from small business owners and entrepreneurs who clearly not only grow our economy, but make life better for their customers, for workers. If you work hard in America, you take a risk, and you build a business from the ground up, then you know what it takes to balance a budget. You each talked about the necessity of balancing a budget. And that's been so evident in the personal stories that you've told. Donald Trump's extreme economic policies are creating nothing but chaos and confusion that you laid out so specifically this morning. He's slapping huge price hikes, tariff taxes, as you said, Haley, and dragging America into an inevitable recession. This isn't about left versus right. It's not about what works and what doesn't. It's clear that his reckless tariffs and his attacks on small business are making life worse, not better. And we're going to do everything in our power to stop these extreme, reckless attacks on our small business. We're going to keep lifting the voices of our small business owners like you, of the employees that work for you, and make sure that we can continue to help small businesses innovate, launch, and thrive and survive. And the fight continues. And with that, this steering and policy hearing stands adjourned.